It is 3:45 on decision day, and right now we do not know whether Judah Mintz will go to the NBA draft or take his name out of the process and return to Syracuse for next season. So until we know that info, we continue with our position breakdown. Today we look at the center position. That's Mounir Hima. That is Peter Carey, the returners. What did they do last year? This one is going to be a little bit more of a deep dive because the sample size is a lot more condensed. But either way, we dive in, we take a look at the center position, and we break it all down on part two of your Wednesday edition of Locked On Syracuse.
Are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up? What's happening? Welcome into your Wednesday episode of Locked On Syracuse. I'm Owen Valentine saying thank you so much for once again making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today and every day. Free and available wherever you get podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. This is the second episode on this Wednesday, the 31st of May. We got to get a bonus episode out to make up for a missed day. And so we continue our discussion about the positions that we talked about yesterday. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Today we're talking the center position because right now we don't quite know how to approach the episode talking and breaking down the guards at this point in time. As I said in the open, it's 3:45. We still don't know what is to happen with Judah Mintz. Does he stay and test the NBA draft waters? Does he come back and go for his sophomore year at Syracuse? That is the decision that he has to make and that he's pondering and what we're waiting on the edge of our seat to find out, right? There have been hints that we've picked up along the way. We've pieced together thoughts based on Instagram stories, hashtags, tweets, things of that nature. We've read into quotes that he's made. We've looked at mocks. I will say of note, many other people pointed it out, as well as myself on Twitter today. Judah Mintz's name has fallen out of a lot of mock drafts, which is an interesting wrench. And when I say fallen out, I mean that a week or two ago, he was anticipated to be drafted. And this week in mocks that came out today on Wednesday, yesterday evening, on Tuesday, his name is no longer in the mix there. And Jonathan Givony, his latest draft from ESPN does not have Judah Mintz being selected. A number of others do not have Judah Mintz being selected. And you're starting to ponder once again, if we read into that, does that indicate that maybe they know something we don't? And does that info now entice Judah to come back at the last possible minute? People are following everyone. Joe Tipton on Twitter, John Rothstein on Twitter, Judah Mintz on Twitter, Judah on Instagram, trying to see where this info can come from, where more detail might be able to come from in this conversation. But right now, we don't have it. We don't quite know what it is that is the situation, and we might not know until 11:59 tonight. Somebody tweeted it out. How funny would it be if he just kept us on the edge of our seat until 11:59 until we got that answer? And the answer might come in the form of silence, all right? He said he's testing the draft waters. A lot of these interviews, you're looking into the quotes, and he's talking about how he's accomplished his dream and he's made it to where he wants to be. And those are all comments that don't sound like you're coming back. But when you look at mocks and see that your name is not supposed to be called, as we once assumed it would, that throws a wrench in the system. You've got some sticky stuff keeping you down. We're not sure, right? What does that mean? And the time is ticking and continues to tick for us to find the answer to that question. I've got Twitter open as I'm recording right now. Maybe we get some news. There's a chance we get a live reaction today based on Judah Mintz's ideas, based on his decision. some things like that. But right now, we just wait. We're talking Syracuse basketball today. There's a little Syracuse football to talk about. So let's finish up our non theme content today. We'll continue talking about that. We've got the first 4 game times for Syracuse football have been announced. That is a little bit exciting. You open up week 1 against Colgate in the Dome. That's a 4:00 tip-off on ACC Network Extra and ESPN Plus to start things off. Week 3, excuse me. You are going to Purdue, right? You're playing the back half of that home and home situation, if you're talking basketball terms. An absolute thriller last season. Primetime NBC game, 7:30 p.m. on NBC at Purdue in week 3. That should be a really, really fun one. You look a little bit further ahead to week 8. Syracuse, Virginia Tech. That is going to be a 7:30 p.m. kick. Another primetime one. And then your third primetime already is Syracuse and BC on ESPN2. That's a home game. That'll be at 7:30 as well. So you've got some home football primetime action. You've got 4 of your games. You understand the time already. You can start to make some plans around those games, some plans for those days if you're trying to schedule around Syracuse football. But interesting, right? You like to see primetime games. It's a good indicator, good for numbers, good for money, things like that. Can Syracuse perform in the primetime games in those weird slots? I think there's a Thursday game in the mix in one of those, maybe Virginia Tech, something like that. That'll be funny to play a Thursday game. But you're starting to piece the timing of the schedule together, and you'll see what happens with it. We're not sure for week 2 just yet. That'll come out in a little bit, I'm sure. But we're starting to get a little piecing together of the football schedule. Same thing on the basketball side. We got a little bit more info. I believe December 21st, Syracuse will host Niagara. Greg Paulus make his way back into the Dome. The Devil wears orange, now wears purple. Shout out to whoever tweeted that. That was very good. I liked that a lot over on Twitter today. I think that came out really nicely. Funny tweet. Good for you. And then also on the basketball side, pretty cool one. Demetrius Nichols, hired in the ACC, gets an assistant coaching spot over at Wake Forest. So good for him. You've seen him in Syracuse for a while, a grad assistant playing here. A little stint with Boeheim's Army, I believe. Gets a job in the ACC. That's exciting. We'll see what happens with that as we move forward. Let's take a little break, and then we will get to our featured content of the day, talking Syracuse centers in the season recap and taking a look next for them, giving them a grade, all of those fun things that we started earlier today. If you missed that, feel free to check it out after you're done listening today. On your other Wednesday episode of Locked On Syracuse, we broke down the forwards, Benny Williams, Chris Bell, Justin Taylor, and Malik Brown over there. Gave them each a grade, asked some questions, and broke down their seasons. Right now, we do the centers after a quick word from our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. It's right now is the best time to make your way over to FanDuel. It's the NBA playoffs, and new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. There are a lot of fun bets. Great promos every day. It's a safe app. It's secure. You get paid instantly when the time comes that you win that bet. There's no better place to bet all of the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Owen Valentine here on part 2 of your Locked On Syracuse batch of Wednesday episodes. Thanks for making it your first listen today and every day, maybe your second listen today, because we already have an episode of Locked On Syracuse out on this Wednesday afternoon. 3:50 at this point in time. Still no word on Judah Mintz. And until we get that word, we continue our life. We go about what we're doing, and we live to see what happens next. Right now, we are talking the center position for Syracuse basketball, breaking down last season, taking a look ahead, giving a couple of grades along the way. There's two guys that are returning centers for Syracuse. We'll do a transfer episode a little bit later, I'm sure. We already have covered the transfers in a good capacity as well. But right now, you got two guys, Mounir Hima and Peter Carey. And they have a tall task at their hands because last season they were very much reserves for a guy in Jesse Edwards who you knew going into the year exactly what you were going to get. He finished off his junior season really strong, had a ton of growth between sophomore and junior year. And you figured this is the guy that's going to play barring foul trouble or severe struggle. Things are a little bit different this year. You look at Naheem McLeod, the theoretical starter, got a little bit more in terms of question marks surrounding him. And as centers right now, you've got a little bit more in terms of responsibility given that scenario. Right now, you look at what happened. Peter Carey played a few games in reserve minutes before suffering a lower body injury that took him out the rest of the year, causing a little redshirt action. You look at Mounir Hima, who played 7 minutes a game last season. That's not a ton to break down. So we do what we can with it today. We'll start with Mounir Hima. Mounir Hima was the primary five off the bench. A guy in Malik Brown played a little bit at times, but Mounir Hima was the backup center. A guy that came in, he's got a lot of size, right? 6'11", 230, offers that size, offers that height. And on the defensive side of the ball, he was all right. Can block some shots, can be a presence in the paint, could step up a little bit defensively when needed. Was it the most consistent thing in the world? No. Was he as aggressive as maybe you'd want him to be? Not necessarily. But defensively, he can hold his own out there. A lot of that you can attribute to the size at 6'11", 230. On the offensive side, Mounir Hima doesn't have much to offer. Right? It's blatant honesty. In 7 minutes a game, Mounir Hima was more likely to score 0 points than he was to score any other amount of points. 17 games with a goose egg in the scoring column this past season. A season high of 4 points. Never played over 20 minutes in a game last season. And a lot of this you can give as a nod to Jesse Edwards playing the bulk of those minutes, staying out of foul trouble, doing his thing. But offensively, Mounir Hima finishes wide open baskets, and there's few and far between outside of that. That's the question, right? What can Mounir Hima do in the offseason to improve the finishing? To make himself, he doesn't have to be a scoring threat, but to demonstrate some more competency in the scoring game and offensively. Another question, and this is a recurring question, is Adrian Autry wants to get out and move, get out and run, be a team of athletes, be a team that's going to push tempo, things like that. I don't know that Mounir Hima fits that style. What can he show in terms of his play style, his ability to contribute to that type of offense, to that type of squad that wants to be a defensive presence and then get out and run? I don't know what he's got in that capacity. You look at good games. He played a lot against St. John. That was his most in terms of minutes, scored 4 points in 19 minutes against St. John's on 6 field goal attempts. All right, he had 8 rebounds in that game as well. That was his best game of the year, most likely. Most minutes, tied for his career or season high, and his most rebounds. He did not necessarily show much more than that, right? He is a guy that didn't have to show any more than that because Jesse Edwards did what you wanted Jesse Edwards to do for the most part last season. And so Mounir Hima was able to, be okay, and being just okay at the center, the season Jesse had, even though there were some games where he struggled and you wanted him to be a little bit more aggressive, Mounir Hima got to fly under the radar. I don't think he can get away with that as much this season. I think he's going to need to elevate things or else he will get swallowed up in what is now a pretty crowded center group. When you bring in, right, we're not talking about them today. You bring in a true freshman in William Patterson, and you bring in a transfer in Naheem McLeod with 2 years of ACC experience, right? Mounir Hima is going to need to elevate his game to warrant being the number 2. Because I think William Patterson, with his confidence, with his work ethic, things like that, has the ability to make that jump. I think Peter Carey, who we'll discuss in a second, is an interesting candidate for those minutes as well. I'm curious what happens with Mounir. I like what he does. He gives you what he can. I'm just not that sure what he can give you at this point in time. In terms of a grade, I'm going to give Mounir Hima a C. He is complacent. Not complacent, that's the wrong word. Competent. C's get degrees, right, is the phrase. Mounir Hima gets the degree, right? He can come in, he can be a presence because he's a tall guy. He's not doing anything above and beyond. He's not doing anything crazy in that regard. There's no ceiling that he's bursting through at this point in time. He just sort of is in that conversation. And as a backup, sometimes that's just what you get. I'd like to see some more aggression. I'd like to see angry Mounir get out there, get fired up, posterize a guy, block the living daylights out of a man, and flex on him. Get a technical foul for all I care. Give me angry Mounir, and let's see what that looks like. Give me post moves Mounir. Does that exist? Right? How can you find other ways to score than simply the wide open basket? And some people, and maybe you've got a good point here, will say, as a backup center, you're not really looking for a scorer. And that's a fair point, right? You're not necessarily looking for 10 points a game out of your backup center. But what Mounir Hima did this season wasn't quite enough for me to be that confident with him, for me to warrant above a C in terms of grade and things like that. So that's where we'll leave him. We look at points per game. Where is it? 1 point per game on average for Mounir. His field goal percentage was 46%. Not incredible given the shots that he was taking. You looked for a lot more out of him. And I think you're going to want to see a little bit of a jump this season for him to warrant maintaining that backup center spot. Take a little switcheroo. We'll talk with the other returning center here in Peter Carey. Now, this is me fetching for straws because the sample size of what we know about Peter Carey is exclusive. It is very, very limited and a finite amount. He played in a couple of games very, very, very briefly. You click on him, you go to the stats, 9 minutes. That's the career high against Bryant. 2 rebounds in that game. He had 1 assist and 1 block. And those are the stats for Peter Carey. Played in 3 games, 4 minutes against Lehigh, 7 minutes against Northeastern, 9 minutes against Bryant. He got in foul trouble and those are all concerning, right? It's not what you want. It's not what you're looking for, right? You want to see him come in and at least be efficient, not picking up fouls, not putting himself in there. But 2 of those 3 games, in under 10 minutes, he was able to pick up 3 fouls. You'd need to see a little bit more defensively in terms of being able to handle your size as a 6'11", 200-pounder, right? Don't be flimsy. Don't be weak where you're picking up tic-tac fouls. Be strong. Be a tree. Be that presence. And you didn't necessarily see that in the brief sample size before he got hurt. I will say, I like Peter Carey's build. I like Peter Carey's athleticism. And I think his ability to move, right? He jumps with the best of them. There's highlights of him taking alley-oops and doing a windmill dunk off the alley-oop. He can elevate with the best of them. I think that play style is really interesting for what we're talking about with Alan Griffin and with Adrian Autry, excuse me. I think it's really, really interesting. That play style, that ability, that speed, things like that. I'm excited to see what that means. If when he comes in healthy, can he be a guy that comes in off the bench, plays the 5, maybe even plays the 4 at times with that ability, that speed, that movement, that athleticism? What can he do with that? Can he get out and move? be a threat in transition, sort of like you saw with Malik Brown, right? Being able to get out and score in transition as the 4. Peter Carey leaves a lot of question marks, right? The sample size at this point in time is 19 minutes. That's less than one half of basketball that we've seen at the college level. I'll tell you things that are questions with him. Can he toughen up? Can he be a little bit more solid in his frame and not look like a little herky-jerky Slender Man type deal? Can he be a little bit more of a presence at 6'11", 200 pounds? Can he put on a little bit more muscle? Can he be that presence? If he can, I think there are minutes for him, especially with the speed and mobility that he presents at 6'11". That's a very good thing to have. Can they do something with that to do it? Grade for him, I'm going to give him a DNF. Did not finish. There's not enough to give a grade here, right? I don't know if there is or where you could find enough to give a grade there. So I'm not going to give one. I will say he could be a great value for Syracuse next year, but that could coincide with him making tremendous leaps in this offseason, coming back from injury. A guy that's battled injury before, right? Injured his senior year, injured the ACL his senior year of high school, hurt this last year. So he's been hurt his last 2 seasons. Is this a Barama Sidibe type situation where you never get to see what a healthy Peter Carey can do? I don't know. But that's where we'll leave this episode today. Interesting stuff today. We're still waiting on Judah. I have not seen anything while I'm recording. Naturally, the second this posts, we will get the info. Tomorrow, we will break down the guards on your Thursday episode of Locked On Syracuse for our everydayers. We'll talk the guards, the returning guards. There aren't many of them, so it might just be the Judah Mintz episode as well, talking that decision, whatever it may be, and really weighing the impacts of it, whether he leaves or comes back. That's where we'll leave it, though, today. I'm Owen Valentine on your Locked On Syracuse Wednesday, Part 2. Thanks for listening. I will catch you tomorrow. Be kind. Make somebody smile today. Peace.